Hey everybody, it's David Kemp, your host of Highway to Health podcast. And we're getting ready for the holiday season. I hope you all have plans to spend it with those closest to you. It's a timely conversation today. With the new year, with the holidays, we always have our habits get shaken up, and there's no way around it. But with 2023 on the horizon, we're probably looking for ways to improve our health, to improve our habits. And so today we get to talk with Amir Rahman, who's the Chief Medical Officer at Day 2, on not just the habit side of your health, but also how information and data can improve and empower your personal decisions. Amir, welcome to Highway to Health.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me, David.
Yeah, I'm glad you're here. We've been talking a lot about the World Cup, and you've spent some time in both of these countries.
A little bit, as a visitor.
Yeah.
Never lived there, but as a visitor, yeah.
So you're pretty torn.
I am torn, and I will not acknowledge on a recording who I'm supporting.
I don't blame you. It's polarizing, depending on who
you talk to. Exactly.
I get it. Well, we'll get into business here in a minute in the healthcare industry, but I always like to ask the executives that join about your own personal habits and how do you stay healthy physically, mentally. What have you built into your daily routine so that you can perform professionally but also personally with your family?
Well, the answer is I play a little bit of tennis, or try to be regular at playing tennis, and I am very regular about going for a walk or trying to get to the gym at least 2 or 3 times a week to the gym. But I'm hesitating on that answer a little bit because you mentioned to me that a lot of people you've had as guests are into mixed martial arts, and in front of that, tennis and walking just seems incredibly dull, but that is the honest answer. And then from a nutrition standpoint, in all honesty, I use the Day 2 app a lot. I know that sounds like a little bit of a plug, but it's not. The reality is that the app helps me figure out what are the right choices for me. So in addition to the exercise, I use the Day 2 app.
Well, I think that's you have to have it. I mean, depending on who you ask, the nutrition side of things is probably the majority of value when it comes to the health habits that you build into your routine. Absolutely. What are your favorite foods?
Well, I'll take a good chicken sandwich or a good steak any day, and those of you from Texas know what I mean when I say a good chicken sandwich and where to get it. But I'd say I'd probably stick with those two.
Yeah, I'm a big steak guy too. Are you a morning routine guy? Or are you just whenever you can get it in?
No, so my routine is usually afternoons. I found that I'm at that age now where I recognize that some things are just not going to happen. When I was younger, it was like, I'm going to get up early in the morning, I'll go play tennis early in the morning, I'll exercise. It doesn't happen for me. So you figure out what is the time that works for you. And for me, what works is either in the middle of the day, around noontime if I have a quick break, or right after work. That's when I can squeeze in it. I just have never been able to nail the morning routine.
Yeah, I am not a morning person, but what I've found is if I don't do it in the morning, other things get in the way.
Yep.
And I can't get in. So it's different for everybody. You just got to find what works for you. You mentioned the Day 2 app, and it's something I want to get into a little bit because with what's been most exciting in healthcare over the last 10 years or so, it's the innovation and the empowerment that's getting back into the hands of the patient, the consumer, to manage their own health and become less reliant on outside sources, outside resources. So, talk a little bit about how you've seen specifically, not just with Day 2, but across healthcare, how innovation has led to increased patient access to care, access to information, and then ultimately improving the options, the choices that the consumer has, the patient has, to managing those healthy habits.
Right. In no particular order of priority, I think the 3 things, and there's others, that are important around innovation is, first and foremost, does it work? Does it solve a problem? The second is it something I can comply with, right? I mean, so there may be the greatest innovation in exercise, but if I'm just not exercising, it's not going to help me. Right. And then the third thing is, is it available at scale, right? So you can have great innovation that is easy to comply with, but it's just not accessible to everybody, whether that's cost or infrastructure, what have you. So for innovation to really matter, it has to work, it has to be something that the individual can engage with and comply with, and then it has to be accessible. And that's where a lot of healthcare in the last decade or so has seen innovation, right? When you look at telemedicine, you look at a lot of digital health companies, especially the early pioneers, they all were able to make innovation slowly accessible to people. What we've done at Day 2 is taken probably what's one of the biggest leaps in medicine or in science, which is the mapping of the human gut microbiome, and making that available at scale. Now, you mentioned earlier about how people can actually take control or take greater ownership of their health, have more autonomy. Autonomy and ownership is possible if you can give people enough tools and knowledge to do the things they need to do for themselves.
Right.
When you make a generic comment to someone like me and say, hey, eat healthy and exercise,
what does it mean?
Yeah, I don't know what to do with that. If you make a broad comment to me and say, hey, just cut out carbs from your diet or go on this particular kind of diet, again, that's a broad statement, and it isn't personalized to me, and it's definitely not precise. If you can create personalization and precision, which are two different things, if you can create personalization and precision for people, that is probably one of the most important things that allows them greater control over their healthcare. Because one, they have the confidence that the science is precise to them, right, and hopefully it will make a difference. And then two, they can figure out how best to comply with it. So I'd say innovation is great, but unless it is available at scale, it's accessible, unless it solves the problem, and unless it is something you can comply with, doesn't really add much value.
Yeah, I think we've seen how personalization has driven adoption because it's more relevant. So tell me a little bit. I mean, we have all the data in the world in healthcare. There's no shortage of data, but oftentimes you're looking at large swaths of data across, a large population, and people in that population might look similar and be of similar age and certain demographics, but we're all different.
Absolutely.
Even within those general demographics. So talk about the kind of personalization that Day 2's been able to identify and then deploy to make these innovations more applicable and more personalized.
Got it. So let me first give you a summary of what the Day 2 tool and product is right now. So Day 2 is using the microbiome, the gut microbiome, and the deep metagenomic analysis of the gut microbiome to help create tools that allow us to better manage type 2 diabetes, pre-diabetes, and clinical weight management. That's the initial focus. It is a very easy to use tool. Most of our partners right now are large employers who make the Day 2 offering available to their employees. But the offering itself is pretty straightforward. People submit a sample on which our lab does a analysis, a full metagenomic analysis of the microbiome. That information gets fed into an algorithm which is based off of about 7 years of groundbreaking research on the microbiome. And that algorithm converts the foods that you're eating into specific scores that tell you whether this is good or bad. Now that's sort of a high-level statement without giving you too many specifics. So now let me get into the specifics. What it means for an individual.
Yeah.
Once your information on your microbiome is in our tool, our sugar predictor, along with other information, height, weight. We have people wear a continuous glucose monitor in our type 2 diabetes and our pre-diabetes program. We're looking at time in range, blood glucose range. Once we have that information, the app will actually, before you eat something, will tell you what the impact of that food is going to be on your body. Now, a lot of times people will say, I already know what's not good for me.
Right.
you'd be surprised how many times we are wrong about that. There are certain foods that I thought were great for me that are actually not very good for me. There are certain foods that I thought weren't good for me that are actually much better for me. The app also tells me, or our tool also tells me how I can modify something. For example, bagels. I love bagels, but a bagel does not score very high for me. If I were to add peanut butter to the bagel, the score goes up. If I've been eating bagels my whole life, and you come to me and say, hey, stop eating bagels, it's not good for you, that kind of habit or behavior change isn't necessarily sustainable.
Right.
In small cases it is, but generally it's not sustainable. So how do you tweak what somebody is doing, give them the information? I know that when I'm being told based on, and now I'm oversimplifying the process, but based on what I'm being told in the app and through our clinicians at day 2, I know that I can actually make better choices. Again, you're not telling me to stop doing something, but you are telling me to modify it.
Yeah.
And what we find is that people actually do make those changes. They make those changes because they're precise. It's not a generic statement. You know, what a bagel score might be for you is very different than what it might be for me.
Based off of my microbiome.
Based off of your microbiome.
Not some age or gender. It's my personal microbiome.
Right, but your age and gender do factor into it.
Sure,
but it is
not solely.
Yeah, but not solely. And we have the largest database of full shotgun sequenced samples. That database allows us to train algorithms that then say, well, here's David's microbiome, based on the responses that we've seen in a very large database around certain foods and the PPGR, the postprandial glycemic response, which is sort of the technical term around it. Based on that post-meal sugar response, here's how David's microbiome is going to react to it.
Okay.
So it's very, very specific to you. And the fascinating thing about the microbiome, which I didn't know until I started working in this space, is that we all differ in our microbiome by about 80 to 90%. The gut microbiome, there's skin microbiome,
Sure.
Oral microbiome. But in our gut microbiome, we differ by 80 to 90%. If you can crack the code on how that microbiome influences your health and your well-being, you can make very, very precise recommendations at scale. Right?
Yeah.
So you, myself, others, we can all have our own specific score based on our microbiome for the foods that we eat.
And I think we talked about the personalization, that's important there, but I want to talk about, we talk about habits all the time, and the bagel example is a perfect one. I like bagels with peanut butter, and if you're telling me that the combination of those two foods, regardless of each individual nutritional value, based on my scientific makeup,
right,
biological makeup, then it's going to be better for me. I'm going to be a better version of myself.
Absolutely.
Then I would rather make that small compromise, maybe not a compromise at all, if I like bagels and peanut butter, and start to see the results through those small tweaks and changes along the way.
Yeah, and a couple of things there. One, you work with, in the day 2 model, you work with our health guides and our dietitians. What they will provide you with guidance on is what are the better food choices. So I'll take a different example. If I have a burger, it doesn't actually score very high for me. Interestingly enough, if I have a cheeseburger, the score is a little bit higher. And again, it's the interplay of the ingredients based on my microbiome. So I'm at a restaurant. I looked at the menu. We have about 10,000. We have about 800 or so restaurants across the U.S. 10,000 locations, or at least that's what our product team has in there. I can actually look at a menu and see what the different choices on that menu are going to be for me. Score. So let's just say I took a particular food item that is a low score, and I eat that, and then I log that food. When I talk to my health guide or my dietitian, they're going to say, hey, saw that you were at restaurant X, and there were other choices there that were better. What made you choose this choice? Or if I did make the better choice, they're going to say, I saw that you made the better choice. Just so you know, you can't eat a burger with cheese every day, right? The better choice doesn't necessarily mean that you can do it every day. So here's how you want to think about food. So those kinds of very precise recommendations, and then the input that our health guides and our dietitians provide, make a huge difference. And that's not just a broad comment. We have the clinical results, the reduction in hemoglobin A1C. We have the weight loss numbers for our clinical weight management program that show that not only does the science and the tool work, but that people comply with it. So you go back to those three things that I said, like, does the innovation work?
Right.
Is it easy to use? And does it create enough precision and personalization? And those three things get hit with the work that we're doing. So we know people use it. We know there's the clinical results that back that up. And then the last thing I'll add on that question is we also look at quality of life measures. And the three things that stand out around quality of life are improvement in sleep quality, improvement in energy levels, and reduction in stress levels. We track that in our in the population that's using the Day 2 product. So to your point, you're looking at it from a nutritional standpoint, but it's improvement in energy, improvement in sleep, reduction in stress, which really make a huge impact for the people that are using our program.
We underestimate the impact on other areas of our life that our nutrition has. But like you said at the beginning, that's why diets have largely been ineffective for most of the population, because I might choose not to eat, gluten,
right,
or any sort of carb because of what I've heard and how it impacted others.
Right.
And so I go all in on this diet or this change of habit based on other people's data,
right,
and not my own. I don't see the results that I'm expecting. It's hard for me to comply with that new habit, with that new direction. I end up giving it up entirely, right? And I'm back at square one shortly. What you're describing is something that it doesn't matter what your husband, your wife, your family's doing. Let's take a look at your microbiome.
Your microbiome.
Let's make a personalized, precise recommendation on what's best for you, and then make it as accessible as possible. You might go to a restaurant with family during the holidays, especially, that a salad's unavailable.
Right.
Well, you don't want to miss out on a meal, especially when you're in fellowship with your family. Use an app like this. Use the information that's available to you through your cell phone that everybody has access to nowadays.
Exactly.
To do what the best case scenario is for yourself in that moment.
That's exactly it. And there's recommendations around how you can modify your food. So it's never going to say don't eat this, but it is going to make a recommendation. And you'd be surprised when you give people precise information that is specific to them and they see that red score. So the scoring, simply stated, and again I'm oversimplifying it, so our microbiome experts and our research team is going to hate me for this, for oversimplifying it.
Speak to me like I'm a 5-year-old. That's
but
what I
well, I've been called out a few times. It's on a 10-point scale, right? So any food that scores an 8 to 10 is good, 6 to 8 is not so good, and below 6 is not good. When people see that green score, or they see a red score, they make their decisions based on what the output from our tool, from our algorithm is telling them, because they know it's precise to them. We all know like what good foods and bad foods are. We still eat them.
Right.
But if it's specific to me and it's showing that, okay, for me this is a 4.8 and for David it's a 4.6, it's bad for both of us. But the fact that it's precise to me makes me pause and say, you know what, let's see what else I can eat. So we know people change their behavior. I mean, we have the data that shows it.
And I want to get into that data here in a minute, but while we're talking about improved access to information and access to data, the second piece of this is access to care and access to professionals. One of the biggest and best things about the innovation in healthcare recently is access to professionals from wherever you are,
right,
and almost at any time of the day. I had a gentleman on the podcast recently that said brick and mortar is still the gold standard. If we could get everybody to go in and see their physician as often as they needed to, that would be great. Truth of the matter is, it's not going to happen.
Right.
There has to be a virtual care element to this, to anything that we implement in healthcare moving forward, and that isn't lost here. you still have that virtual care element on the back end.
Right. So we have our health guides and our dietitians. Although one piece of feedback that we constantly get is, how can you digitize the program even more? We feel very strongly that there needs to be a human component to it. Now, you can adjust that human component and reduce it as the digitization happens, but we will always keep that component in the back. So that's one broad comment. The second thing I want to point out is our food database is 1 million plus foods across different ethnicities, different strata. So what we wanted to do was make sure that we were taking into account any disparities, any health equity disparities, that we were taking into account the social determinants of health. So it's not just about food that only David, you are eating, or only food that I'm eating. It's a huge database so that people with different backgrounds participate in the program. Like I said, we work with health plans and large employers.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, it's a tool that is focused, or a product that is focused right now on as I said, type 2 diabetes and pre-diabetes and clinical weight management. It is a tool that has to span across people with different backgrounds.
Yeah, it's such, weight management leads to a lot of chronic conditions, and I think what we've seen, I looked up the data just the other day, it's over 50% of Americans are battling, this weight management issue, and so there's no easy solutions, and that's not what we're trying to convey here. What companies like Day 2 and others are trying to do is bridge the gap between expectation, behavior, and ideal state, and making it easier with information, with access is what everybody could desire. You touched on who you work with, health plans and employers. There has to be a return for these health plans and for these employers, for them to be a part of a program like Day 2, which means you have to have data to back up.
Absolutely.
And so talk a little bit about the prevention, the preventative care aspect of what Day 2 is seeing with current consumers, and where you see this going down the road.
So if we start with type 2 diabetes, our data has shown that we have been successful in reducing the hemoglobin A1C in people that are living with type 2 diabetes using the Day 2 program. Many of these people are on medications that then get reduced. So we work with their primary care providers. They're the ones that adjust the medication. But there is a medication reduction in a big proportion of our population. Then there's a reduction in complication rates. There's a reduction in the comorbidities, again, that we see in our data. So there is for want of a better term, there is a return on investment of the program. That's one comment. The second is, a lot of the people that we enroll, especially people living with type 2 diabetes, they will tell you they've been living with type 2 diabetes for 5 years, for 10 years, for 11 years. And most of the conventional approaches, the way we treat chronic conditions, haven't really worked. They work in managing the condition, but is it really working if I'm just taking a higher and higher dose of the drug to manage my condition, or is that system not working? There are the compliance issues that come with that, like just individuals, like are they taking their medications?
Right.
There's the side effects that come with that, and then there's the cost that comes with that.
No doubt.
All three of them, by the way, contribute to access issues. Compliance, if you don't take that into account, that in and of itself is an access issue, because you made it so difficult for me to comply with this. I can't access the benefit of the treatment that you're offering. Cost definitely factors in, and side effects factor in. If you can remove those variables, those factors from somebody effectively managing the chronic condition that they have, and that they can live a much healthier life, like why wouldn't you?
Why not?
So that's on the type 2 diabetes. On the pre-diabetes program, what we're doing is we're moving people out of the pre-diabetic range using our program. And then on the weight management program, we're helping people with weight management. And I say management as opposed to loss. Weight loss is a component of weight management, but a lot of times it's actually maintaining your weight. People lose weight and then they go back up on the weight they are. So they're not interested in losing the weight as much as they are in maintaining it. So we have data in all three that shows the program works, and that's actually why employers make the day 2 program available to their employees, because it works and it shows a return.
Which is such an important part of all of this right now, because just at a macro level, it's harder now than ever to hire and retain top talent for employers.
Right.
So it's getting more costly to employ high talent, high level talent, because of the hiring environment that we're in. But also when you add the health element to this,
right,
it can be more costly. So there's stress there. And our providers are seeing an unprecedented amount of stress, right, on the provider system because of some of these chronic diseases and chronic conditions that our populations are facing, along with shrinking and diminished returns and reimbursement structures from government payers and really
right,
any health plan. And so any piece of the pie that you can help an employer save or a provider to experience less stress on their system is a win for everybody.
Absolutely. And the biggest win is that we're bringing a pretty significant breakthrough in science. We're making it accessible to large populations. I have a few friends, and one of my buddies hurt his shoulders. Now, he has means that are 100x those of other folks. And he was telling me about this special clinic in Europe that he's going to go to, and there's like these world-class scientists that are going to look at his cells and then implant some cells. And I'm thinking, that's wonderful. How does everybody else get access to that?
Yeah.
Until those kinds of innovations, and hopefully it works, by the way, and I hope for his sake it works. But when you have such tremendous advances in science, or when you have such tremendous care available, but you can't make it widely available, you're really not cracking the nut in terms of population health.
Well said.
Our differentiator is that just think about it. We can actually do the analysis on your specific microbiome and make recommendations for you on an ongoing basis. People use our app year after year. Right? We have some of the highest engagement rates on our app in the industry. We can make that level of precise analysis, or we can do that level of precise analysis and make that level of precise recommendations. Whereas I think 10 years ago, it probably wasn't even possible scientifically, and 5 years ago, it wasn't possible economically.
Sure.
And now it is. Employers are offering it to their employee population.
That's one of the most exciting things about where we are in healthcare.
Absolutely.
Is the access to these innovations. And that makes me think of, I'm a sports junkie. We talked about the World Cup earlier. Forever we've heard, for the past 20 plus years, we've heard about how Tom Brady is playing at 45 years old at a high level now. And he has access to a team of people, dietitians, nutritionists, physical therapists, trainers, and his diet is so refined specifically for him. Healthy foods that, quote unquote, healthy foods that are generally healthy for everybody, like tomatoes, he won't touch because he knows, and his team has built up enough data to show that it inflames his body. A tomato does, right? Where I'm thinking I got to eat as many tomatoes as possible because they're healthy, quote unquote. So access to that kind of information, that data that helps him live such a high quality of life and perform at such a high level is now starting to become widely available to the general population.
Yeah. So I'll make two clarifications to what you said. One is, I told you even as we were prepping for this that I wasn't going to comment on Tom Brady, more for sports reasons than health reasons. Second is, I'm not sure what program Tom Brady is using, but what you said is absolutely true. That level of specificity and that level of precision that was only available at a very, very elite level is now available much more broadly with the same effectiveness. And we know that, again, I can't emphasize this enough, from a clinical standpoint, we know that it works. We have the data that shows it works.
So you're saying anybody can be Tom Brady if they're on the Day 2 app?
Again, I'll go back to statement number one, which is I wasn't going to comment about the Tom Brady thing, more from a sports standpoint than a science standpoint.
I'm kidding. I'm giving you a hard time.
I spent most of my life in D.C., so I have to be very careful about which quarterback
yes, you do.
I talk about. Or
sports.
And we're in Dallas now, so you should be a little bit more careful.
Nobody likes Tom Brady around here, except
just
him,
yeah.
our CRO. But no, I think this is important, and you touched on it 2 seconds ago, and I interrupted you. You know, how this was handled 5-10 years ago. You know, innovation is something we've said 100 times on this podcast just today. But when you look back at 5-10 years ago, how this was handled and how consumers or patients were empowered or maybe not empowered to make some of these choices with real data, you know, talk about the challenges that were, you know, in the growth that we've seen through innovation just from as short a time ago as 5-10 years ago.
Challenges with respect to?
How was this handled? I mean, how would this be managed 5-10 years ago as compared to now?
So I think 10 years ago it wouldn't even have been managed, because the concept and the science was just so in its early stages.
Just 10 years ago.
Absolutely. But you know, 10 years ago, if you had told me that you can map the DNA of the bacteria in my gut and use that information to make recommendations on what foods that I eat that are better for me and how I modify them, like, actually nobody could have even explained it, because it was, you know, that that far from what we could imagine. I guess we could imagine it, but explaining how it would work would be a challenge. So that was 10 years ago. 5 years ago, it was handled more along the lines of what you mentioned earlier, which is it was accessible in very, very select cases, very, very select situations. Now, two things have happened. One, the accessibility is much broader. It's available at scale. Two, the science has progressed so much that you have much better models now. The machine learning is much better. The artificial intelligence tools that are applied to it are much, much better. So the science has progressed much more as well. I'll give you an example from the auto industry. So I use a lot of car analogies. But if you go back 30 years ago, and this may not be the best example, so maybe we go back 20, 25 years ago, anti-lock brakes were a improvement or a feature that was available on only the most expensive cars. And it was a pretty expensive feature, even on those very expensive cars. And then slowly, the technology became available more and more, right? Because we said, well, gosh, don't I deserve anti-lock brakes for my family? Like, why do I have to be rich just to have that? Same thing with airbags. As the technology progressed, the features became more and more accessible to more and more people, and the technology also got better and better. Whereas today, you wouldn't think of buying a car that doesn't have airbags, that doesn't have an advanced braking system, or it doesn't have those features. But try to explain to somebody from 40 years ago or 50 years ago the airbag concept, and they're like, yeah, I get what you're saying, I just don't know how we would productize it or operationalize it. That's happening now in healthcare. It's happened in every industry, and it happens all the time. It's not just unique to the last 10 to 5 years. But when it comes to precision medicine, and when it comes to the microbiome, the last 10 years, and specifically the last 5 years, have been tremendous progress that has allowed more and more people to access these tools.
And what I love about these kind of conversations is it's not pie in the sky. Look,
No.
5 years from now, we'll get there. This is being applied today. It's available today. And it's something that's making a real impact already.
Yep. Yeah. So if I can take a second and just walk you through how the program actually works. So an employer or a health plan signs up with Day 2. It's a digital health product. We send them a kit, the individual. So the employer says, you know, David is eligible. We send David a kit. You submit a sample. We run the analysis. While that analysis is being run over a couple of weeks, our team starts working with you. You download the app. You have a session with a health guide or a dietitian. Initially, every other week or at 3-week intervals, just to make sure that you're orienting to the program and you understand the microbiome. It's just a high-level understanding. Yeah. A lot of people skip right to once the microbiome results are back and it gets fed into the algorithm and then it starts populating their app. A lot of people just use the app. Sure. And they use it on an ongoing basis, and that's the tool. It really is as simple as that. And I'll show you once we're done. I'll show you on my phone the app and just how simple it is.
So we've talked about the last 10 years, 5 years, what's available today. Where do you see this science going in the next, if we were to look down the road, 5, 10 years, where do you see the next breakthrough?
I would go so far as to say that understanding the microbiome and how it influences our health is probably one of the biggest leaps in medicine that I'll see. There is now there's a very, very strong established link, the brain-gut axis, where we know that for a lot of neurological conditions and mental health conditions, the microbiome influences that or impacts that, or vice versa. What we've been talking about so far is, here's the individual's microbiome. How can I make recommendations for that individual that accommodates their microbiome? And over time it changes, and we'll do retesting and keep redoing the numbers. But if you're living in a stable environment, by stable environment I mean you're eating roughly the same meals, you're living in the same place, it doesn't evolve that much. There's a whole science, and there's a lot of research that we're also doing on this that is about manipulating your microbiome.
Sure.
Right? So can I actually take somebody that may have a particular condition, and if their microbiome composition is A, and that of a healthy individual is B, can I migrate them from A to B that is specific to that individual?
Over time.
Over time. And that has implications for drug responsiveness. It has implications for side effect profiles. It has implications for the onset of a particular condition, and it has implications for mitigating the symptoms of a condition. So the science
True preventative care.
Absolutely. The science is making huge progress, even as we speak, in terms of how the microbiome will influence the management of many different conditions. And this isn't theoretical, or people are out there testing their hypothesis. These are now established link that people are figuring out, okay, how do I turn this into a service that a broad swath of the population can access?
You hear anecdotal stories of this where, you change your habit, you change, a diet, and, mental clarity and other things about your body start to click and perform at higher levels. I think you're right. I think I see the science proving those anecdotes more commonly and more definitively over time.
Yeah. I mean, just go back to the example that I shared around our quality of life measures in our population that is living with type 2 diabetes. Stress reduction is significant in that population. Now, we know that one of the reasons for that is we've taken the anxiety out of food choices. So where somebody that may not have a chronic condition can go into any place and just eat whatever they feel like, and I have a chronic condition, I walk in, I have to make trade-offs. And I have to make decisions not to eat certain things that you could just walk in and eat. If you can take that anxiety out of my choices, that reduces your stress level. We know that energy levels go up. We know that, as I mentioned earlier, sleep is improved. All of that contributes to better clarity, to your point. So these are real impacts that science is having on people's well-being.
If there was one thing that you wanted to get across to our listeners, maybe it's something you've already touched on that you want to reiterate. Maybe it's something we haven't touched on at all. What is the one thing that you want them walking away from this conversation understanding?
The importance of the microbiome in managing health and wellness. That is probably the most important thing that I would say they take away from it. People think it's a different kind of diet. It's not a diet. People think that the links aren't there generally. The links have been established between clinical conditions and the microbiome. I would say take away the importance of the microbiome as a tool in your health and wellness.
Whenever an innovation like this happens, a breakthrough like this happens, education has to happen.
Right.
You have to educate the patient or the consumer. You have to educate providers, because when all of the providers were in school, this wasn't science.
It wasn't science, and then in med school we really don't get a whole lot of training around nutrition.
Right.
So.
And same thing with employers. Mm-hmm. They have to understand the benefits
Yep.
that it could bring to their employees and to the organization. Same with health plans. Yep. I can't wait to see the type of education that Day 2 is able to provide on these topics, because I can't wait to learn more.
Yeah, I think the most powerful tool we have in providing education is we start with our outcomes. And when people look at our outcomes, they sit up and they pay attention. And then we talk about our product, which is the microbiome analysis and the app and the support from the clinical team. They say, all right, so I saw the results, now I understand how you got the results. Then we start talking about the science, because we want them to understand what's powering
Sure.
this. But I found that if we start with the science first, sometimes people are like, I'm not sure I'm following you. So the results speak for themselves. And then the ease of use and the engagement that the product enables really starts getting people's attention. And then you support it with the science.
Yeah, I think the results get me excited, but also knowing that this isn't a stop, redirect to see the results that I'm
Yep.
hoping for. This is a work this into your current lifestyle.
Exactly.
And start to see the improvements that you're hoping for based on your own science, your own microbiome. And that's inspiring.
That's exactly it. You made a comment about education and adoption rates. You'd be surprised at how supportive of innovation employers are. Employers willing to offer these tools to their population because they're looking for a solution that makes their employees healthier and happier. So one of the big supporters of innovation in healthcare have been employers because they're the ones that have adopted many of these innovations and supported them.
Almost out of necessity.
Almost out of necessity, yep. Health plans, employers, certainly providers, but I want to highlight the fact that employers have been big supporters of innovation in healthcare.
That's great to hear. Well, thank you for being on the show.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And I've learned a lot. I hope everybody listening has learned too, and hope you guys have a great holiday. And man, 2023 looks great for everybody. Hopefully you start to implement some of these habits and new resources to improve your overall health. Have a good one.